Well, good morning. I decided to come out and try sunrise again. It's not silly o'clock, but it's rather early for me to be out here. But since I did get 6 or 7 hours sleep, unlike Gavin Hardcastle, I don't have a face that looks like a smashed up jack-o'-lantern. I don't know what we're going to get. Even though it said, the weather forecast said 0% chance of clouds. This time of year there's always clouds on the horizon. That's why I don't like coming out too much during the summer. But I did get a request to do another one from the beach, so I thought I'd give it a try. Still about 15 minutes away from sunrise. I've been out here for about a half hour trying to find a composition, hoping that maybe that some of those clouds would break up, but so far nothing. Maybe the best way to do this is when you take multiple exposures, you wait until that water is just starting to recede and you have a fairly fast shutter speed, at least for water, maybe a third of a second, something like that, so you get some texture in the water, but you want it receding. And then you take another exposure with a bit longer one so you can flatten out the water a little bit out here. And also you want to underexpose because of those clouds to get some of that orange that it's probably hard to see in this on this camera, but there is some orange out there. It's not much, it's being blocked by those clouds. But if you underexpose, then you can blend that in there later on if you get that sun to light up those clouds a little bit. Sorry I didn't walk you through more on the beach. It got really frantic there very quickly. The sun came up just on the horizon. The clouds were blocking, and then it would peek through for about 30 seconds to a minute and then back behind a big clump of cloud. And so I kept having to take on and off the 6-stop and try and get some texture in the waves near the rocks, but then flatten it out. And also I ended up changing the aperture once the sun got a little bit higher and peaked halfway through a cloud. I changed the aperture to f20 and f18 and took a bunch of shots, maybe try to get the rays. So we'll see what we can get. I'll put it back on the computer and I'll let you know. I wanted to share with you what I ended up with. I ended up with 2 separate images. I don't know that either one of them are portfolio worthy or hang them on the wall worthy, but you can't always get them. It wasn't the greatest sunrise in the world, but I did come away with a couple of images. Now, the first one, I'm going to show you the 2 images that I took it from, the top and the bottom. And rather than going through the entire process of showing you how I edit them, it took a little too long and it would have bored you more than it probably bores you now. However, what I did was I took the water from the one and then I took essentially everything else from the other one. And rather than just aligning them and painting in the darker one, I did that. However, I did it with a brush and did it with a very low opacity, maybe 3%, 5%. I changed the opacity a couple of different times and I blended it in until I was happy with it. Then I took it back into Adobe Camera Raw, made a few masks and dodged and burned, and took a linear gradient and fixed the sky a little bit more the way I wanted it. And then I also took a brush, a masking brush, and lightened the water a little bit. And then I also had the issue of the water was blue because I took it at a certain time, and the sky had more yellow in it. So I then had to match them up as best as possible. So this is what I ended up with on the first image. Again, it's not a great image, but I wanted to show you what I ended up with. I also wanted to mention really the reason why I didn't show more while I was recording. Unfortunately, we had, I don't know what the guy's problem was, whether he was on drugs or what, but we kind of had a lunatic running in through the parking lot and then over on the beach, and I assume he was drugged out, and he was just screaming profanities at people and trying to pick fights, and between trying to protect myself and my gear and take photos, it was just really hard to record. So I apologize, but I had to do it. And then when I got in my car, he kind of followed me, so even the response in my car was short. I looked in the video. No, you don't see him behind my car in that little spot, but soon after he was behind my car trying to block me from even getting out. So that's why if I seemed a little rushed in the video this time, I apologize, but it's just what I had to do. Okay, that being said, the second one here essentially was one image. 95% of it was one image. And this image here that I'm showing you was the raw file from the one that I took right before the one that I ended up using. It's essentially the same, except the water's changed a little bit. Since I had already edited that raw file and I didn't want to take it back to where it was originally, I just showed you the one that I took roughly 2 seconds before that one. And they were both shot at ISO 64, f8, and the one I ended up with in this second one, I think was about a half a second, but I'd have to go back and look for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was a half a second. And then what I did was on this other image, the second one, all I did was take the sun, because I mentioned earlier, I changed my aperture to f18 and f20. This one I think was f18. And all I did was take a little slice of that sun and blend it into the other image. And this is what I ended up with. So those are the two images. I guess the point of it is to just go out and shoot. Even if you don't get a portfolio shot, you're still out there, you're in nature, you're having a good time, other than lunatics screaming at you and chasing everyone off the beach. But other than that, it was a grand morning. But what it did do was it forced me to come back and practice Photoshop again. It forced me to practice blending images again. Obviously, ultimately, the goal is to just take one image, right? You don't always want to have to blend images. But with sunrises and sunsets, because of the dynamic range, it's not always possible. However, as you can see by this second image here, it pretty much was. You can see how much from the raw file, and I've mentioned this before, I use a Nikon Z7 II, and this was shot with the 24-120 f4 lens, which I really like. I used to always use a 20mm when I shot seascapes, but I've started using this 24-120 a little bit more. I did have a polarizer on it. I also had a 6-stop. I use case filters, which the magnetic ones that I really like. I know other people have spoken about them, but they really are pretty good. And then I also used photo pills that told me essentially where the sun was going to be on the horizon when it came up, so that I could get my composition ready before the sun ever came over the horizon. Now, I did change my composition 3 times. I wasn't really happy with the first 2. So it's just another thing that you do. You just move around. If you're not happy, you just change it. Because of the way the clouds were, it forced me to kind of change, and then there really wasn't much going on in the ocean as far as waves. It was a pretty calm morning, except for the Lunatic chasing everybody off the beach. Anyway, that being said, it was nice to get out, shoot the sunrise, and practice some photography and practice some Photoshop. So I encourage you to get out and do the same. Enjoy life. Go have fun. Until next time, take good care. Oh, one last thing. Please like and subscribe if you like this one or some of my other videos. I don't know why I always forget to ask, but I do. Please like and subscribe. Now, take good care.